There's a story I heard not too long ago. I found it quite curious, for it occurred right here in the town of Boonton, New Jersey. I'd like to retell it this evening, if you don't mind, but fair warning, death is involved. Death begins each morning quite the same as the last. He gets out of bed, puts on his oversized hooded robe, and stands in front of the mirror, telling himself, today is going to be a great day. Why then, as he walks out the door, does he feel so much dread? He steps out onto Cornelia Street when his phone rings. It's his boss. It's time to pick someone up. He arrives at the house of Zane, age 22, barista by day, suburban rapper by night. So young, so hip, Death thinks to himself. He rings the doorbell. Zane's mom answers. Death is unsure of how to proceed, so he just says, "Hi, is Zane home?" She greets him warmly like an old friend come to visit. "Come in, have some tea," she insists. "But please, take off your shoes." Death follows her in, takes off his shoes, and when she asks, "What kind of tea do you like?" he responds, "Green, please, I'm on a cleanse." Zane is upstairs in his room, she tells him. "Feel free to go up." He thanks her for the tea and heads upstairs. Outside of Zane's door, Death takes a moment to gather himself, then knocks. "Come in," yells Zane. Death walks into a room full of scattered clothes, odd smells, and worn-out posters. Scarface introducing his friend, 50 Cent giving financial advice, Eminem talking about family. "Hey Zane, how are you?" "Good, trying to see how fast I can beat this game. You ever play it before? It's rad." Zane didn't take his eyes off the television screen. He was playing Super Mario Brothers on Super Nintendo. Death knew it well. Death and Zane spoke for a while. Death lay on Zane's bed, staring up at the revolving fan, while Zane multitasked, playing, drinking water, eating chips, speaking, doing everything seamlessly, like a well-done collage of adolescence. Eventually, Zane mentioned his job. "A barista, huh?" Zane's description interested Death. The opportunity to start people's day off right, to become a positive part of people's day. He wanted to give it a try. "Would you mind if I cover your next shift?" Death asked. I don't know if we can do that, but sure, why not? I work today at noon. I'm feeling under the weather anyway," he said as he grabbed a handful of M&Ms and shoved them in his mouth. A feeling of excitement ran through Death's bones. He sprung up and ran out the door, slamming it behind him. Down the stairs and out the house, yelling thanks behind him and forgetting his shoes and Zane. He pulled an espresso shot, steamed some milk. And rang a bell to announce the order. Grande mochaccino! He was delighted. The Billboard's Top 100 hits played over the noise of people typing, talking, and sipping, and he loved it. Everyone seemed so pleased to see him. This is a job I can do well, he told himself quietly. That's when he noticed a bit of commotion coming from the corner of the store. Some people had fallen over and were holding their stomachs. Then more and more. Till suddenly it seemed like everyone except the baristas were rolling on the ground groaning. The manager walks over to the counter and demands a coffee from Death. Death makes him one, and no sooner has the manager tasted it that he finds himself rolling on the ground beside his customers. That was terrible, hissed the manager. You've poisoned us with your awful coffee. Get out, you're fired, he groaned. Death looked around at the pain he had caused and leaves without a word, head down, robes dragging. As he steps outside in disappointment, his phone rings. It's his boss. Sorry. It's time to pick someone up. Death stands outside of JFK High School. He's been sent to pick up Janice, 12th grade history teacher. His boss was angry he forgot Zane, but was willing to overlook it this time. I'm going straight in, he tells himself. I need to get out of this funk. He tries to walk straight into Janice's classroom when he hears a yell. Excuse me, young man. He turns and sees the receptionist yelling him over from her front desk. He walks over slowly. Where do you think you're going without a visitor's pass? Death apologizes and tells her he forgot. He says he's here to see Janice and he's asked to sign in. The receptionist hands him a big white sticker with the words visitor on it and a space for his name. He writes Joe and laughs to himself. A few minutes later, he walks into Janice's classroom. The room is neat and well decorated. Famous quotes from men and women he once knew hang on the walls. Every seat, including the teachers, is also empty. Then the bell rings. Students swarm in and start taking their seats while simultaneously chatting and laughing. Their worries are few, their youth is evident. Excuse me, Mr. Joe, a student calls out to him. May I go to the bathroom? Dev tries to explain he's not a teacher, but then stops. Why don't I try? I know history. I can do this, he tells himself. Of course, he replies to the student. But hurry back, we've got an exciting lesson planned for today. He turns to the rest of the class and asks for silence. Hello, class. My name is, Mr. Joe, and I'm going to be covering for your teacher today. You may not know this just by looking at me, but I am much older than I seem. The class remains silent. They are both confused and intrigued. Since I may become your permanent teacher after today, we're going to forget what you've learned so far and begin from the very start of everything. He tells them, please save your questions for the end of class. Whatever nerves Death had disappeared the moment he began speaking. The greatest dinosaur that ever died, he exclaims, and on he goes. And don't even get me started on Caesar. What a death that was. History had never been so exciting. Death felt like he was floating through history. So wrapped up was he in the fond memories of the past that before he knew it, the bell had rung. He let out a sigh of satisfaction and turned to look at his class. He felt a chill spread through his bones. The class, every row, every occupied seat had a motionless student in it. All heads lay on their arms, sprawled on their desks, but they were not sleeping. Death had bored them all to death. He stood with his mouth agape. Why did it seem that he could do no right? He starts for the door when Janice walks in. Wherever she had been is irrelevant. She is irrelevant, he thinks. He pushes past her without a second look and runs down the hall, despite yells not to do so. When he finally reaches outside, he takes a breath of relief. Off school grounds, he takes out a cigarette and lights it. He takes a long drag and thinks to himself, if only these things could actually kill me. As he wallows in his existential despair, his phone rings. It's his boss. It's time to pick someone up. As he waits for his Uber driver, he considers the event of his days. His boss would say he's been a failure. He's wasting his potential. Potential for what, he asks himself. How did I end up here? A red Toyota Corolla pulls up, recently washed and waxed, with Blackbird by the Beatles playing loudly. It rolls down its windows. The driver turns to Death, waiting. Death walks up and asks, Uber for Death? The driver smiles and nods and Death gets in the front seat. Can you turn the music down, please? Death asks. The driver complies with hesitation. How's it going today? Death asks monotonously, a question required of every Uber ride. Then the driver answers the same as every other one. He lists off the good and bad things of his day so far. Death has been sent to pick up this very driver, Steve. But truth be told, he could care less. He hasn't heard a single word Steve has said. He silently hums Blackbird in his head. Steve notices and asks him what's wrong. Death is caught off guard. So engulfed in his thoughts was he that for a moment he forgot where he even was. I hate my job, he screams before he has a chance to hold back. It's not who I am. But yet it feels as if every day becomes more and more a part of me. Steve nods. Then quit, he tells him, before it consumes you. Man, become an Uber driver. Take people wherever they want to go, listen to their joys and woes, be nobody and somehow somebody. Death is left speechless, but the wheels have begun to turn. Let me out here, he tells Steve. Steve pulls over without asking a single question. Death opens the door and takes a hard look at Steve before stepping out of the car. You're a good man, Steve, and a great Uber driver. 5 stars for you. Death walks out of the car and heads home. I can't believe how easy this was, Death tells himself. He sits in his car and looks at his phone. He receives a notification. He's got someone to pick up. He smiles. He pulls up to a young man playing on his phone and rolls down the window. Uber for Dale? Dale says yes and gets in. Typical Uber conversation ensues. A water bottle is offered, music is suggested, questions are asked. Then, Death's phone beeps. It beeps again and again. He excuses himself and takes a look at it. It's his boss. Death begins to feel rage. He starts to look at his phone as it continues to beep. The texts won't stop coming in. Angrier and angrier they get. He finally grabs it and begins to text back. He doesn't know what to say. Dale begins to speak to him in a worried voice. Hey man, watch the road. Cars honk and drivers scream. Death screams and honks back. He starts to swerve. Dale is screaming out too. I'm going to give you 0 stars, you maniac. Death takes a sharp turn and drives off the road. He steps out of the smoking car. It sits, smashed against a giant oak tree. Dale, slumped in the back seat, holds his phone still. Death looks around. To his surprise, he is outside his boss's office building. He doesn't know how he got there, but he brushes off his robes and walks in the front door. He walks without thinking, through the lobby, down the hall, a left, another left, and finally a right, and he stands outside his boss's door. He takes a deep breath and walks in. I won't repeat what was said, as there are children present, but if Death had a heart, he'd have died of a stroke. As Death walks out the door, his boss is still screaming after him. It feels as if he'll always be screaming. Death walks in a haze back out of the building. What will I do now, he thinks. Where will I work? What will I do, he asks himself again. Suddenly, he hears a bird sing. He realizes the sun is shining. Its rays landing directly on his milky white face. He feels a breeze. In the distance, he hears laughter. He hears the steaming of milk, the writing of chalk on blackboards, the screeching of bad driving. What will I do? He asks himself and smiles. He begins to walk, no thought as to where, no worry either. He simply walks and smiles, whistling a tune he never realized he knew. That's it. Everybody, thank you for listening to our story, and thank you for coming to open mic. We hope you had a great time, and we hope to see you again next month. If anyone hasn't gotten any coffee, we have decaf.